On behalf of the post-2015 team in Jordan, I'd like to welcome Ms. Alia Zureikat, Director of the Communication and International Relations Department at the High Council for the Affairs of Persons with Disabilities. Alia, welcome.
Thank you.
In your view, what kind of policies, strategies or interventions have been most successful in addressing inequalities so far?
I'm assuming that the question relates to inequalities relating to people with disabilities. So I'm going to speak in that regard.
Of course.
If we look at the lifespan of the MDGs, or the Millennium Development Goals, which is from 2000 to 2015, I'd say that one of the most successful and indeed global intervention is the introduction and development of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that was called for in 2000, just after the MDGs were announced, and took almost 6 years to develop until the actual adoption in 2006. So I think as an intervention, a global intervention, it was the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. That convention, as we know, is the first international agreement or treaty of the 21st century, so that's a double achievement. It has set the stage for introducing and reiterating the need for focusing on issues relating to disabilities, not only in terms of national countries, but in terms of the global community as represented by the UN. Now, as a result of that intervention, which we signed in March 2007 and we ratified as Jordan in March 2008, by virtue of Article 33 of the UN Convention, every country has to have a kind of steering committee, a national body that kind of responds and ensures the proper implementation of the country's commitments to that convention. So as Jordan, and in order to translate our commitments nationally, we have His Majesty King Abdullah II called in 2007 for the development of a national strategy for persons with disabilities, and by default, by virtue of that strategy, we have three major milestones took place. One was the annulment of the old law for the welfare of the disabled of 1993. The second thing is the replacement of that old law with a new current law, which is the law number 31 for the year 2007. That law is a rights-based law. It deals with disability via a rights-based approach, and the person with the disability is at the core of all activities and functions and interventions by virtue of that law. And then finally we have, by virtue of law number 31 for the year 2007, we have the creation and the establishment of HCD, the Higher Council for Affairs of Persons with Disabilities, as an independent public entity that is responsible for following up and overseeing the implementation of Jordan's commitments on a national scale.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the MDGs drew enough attention to the persons with disabilities?
Unfortunately, the MDGs made no mention of disability or people with disabilities. And that is in fact one of the reasons why back then when they were announced after the summit, the 2000 Global Summit, that the disability community back then went into a kind of uproar. And that was why they called for an international convention, a UN convention that would answer to the apparent gaps that exist at the global, regional and national level. So as a direct response to the lack of mention of disability issues. Within the MDGs, you have the UN Convention.
How can the combination of environmental and attitudinal barriers within communities and institutions lead to persons with disabilities being effectively excluded from participating in social, civil and political processes, do you think?
You mentioned environmental and attitudinal. I think before environmental, it's the focus on attitudinal. Attitudinal barriers are perhaps the first port of call into acceptance and integration and inclusion in any society. Acceptance of the parents, the family, and the community, and then society at large is the number one factor, or the first step towards inclusion. So when we have attitudinal barriers, we have no acceptance, there's stigma associated with the disability, there's shame, and that leads to the family and parents denying the existence of a disability in the first place, which makes it difficult for them to look for solutions. Because as we know, acceptance is halfway the solution. That's in terms of attitudinal barriers. In terms of environmental barriers, and it is connected to attitudinal barriers, if we have obstacles in terms of physical, the physical environment or the communicational environment, you prevent us from being able to get to a certain point, get to to access facilities, services. We're not able to come out of our shells and go out of the home, beyond the doorstep, and kind of interact with people. Because as we know, if people see us, the more people see us, the more they know about us, the more they know about our needs, the more they appreciate and accept that although we may look different, we're all one and the same. We have apparent physical differences, but at the end of the day, if given the equal opportunities, and if given the chance and the opportunity to be a functional citizen and to be properly rehabilitated, then we can. So actually having those two barriers is dangerous.
Persons with disabilities in all societies can experience economic inequality as a result of their marginalization. How can this risk be reduced, in your opinion?
When we talk about economic inequalities, there has to be certain prerequisites. To reduce that risk and to make people with disabilities more functional, obviously you need to start the core at the beginning. And to start at the beginning means that we need to focus on inclusion and early intervention at a young age. So it's early intervention, early diagnosis as a child, and then proper rehabilitation, obviously, and then you have inclusive education. So education. If you equip them with the proper education and you include them in schools and those small educational communities, you're actually preparing people with disabilities for what comes later. So inclusive education policies, strategies are the start. As HCD, we have an education programs department that works on implementing our inclusive education policy or strategy as outlined in the national strategy for persons with disabilities. Currently, the way we do that, we subsidize transport fees to allow people with disabilities to be included, to go and access schools, government schools in their communities. We also have the Prince Rad Scholarship for people with disabilities interested in higher education. I think just last year there were about 885 students with disabilities enrolled in that program. So that is in terms of education. Now, when you talk about employment, obviously, again, as I said, the skills, the basic skills are supposedly given during your educational years and your schooling years. But in terms of employment, there are multiple factors. There is equipping, obviously, the person with a disability with the skill that matches the needs of the job market, and then there is making that match between the needs of the demand and the supply, and then ensuring that not only are they given the jobs and recruited, but they're also they receive on-the-job training so that people with disabilities, once they're on the job, they can be trained, they can be coached, not only for them but also for the employer, because obviously employers are not very well equipped to how to deal with people with disabilities. The assumption is, unfortunately, that if he has a physical or a visual or a hearing impairment, he's not as functional as other people, whereas in fact studies show the absolute opposite. People with disabilities have more discipline, they have they're more patient, and they're very studious when they when they tackle anything, and they don't finish it and complete it 100%. So there's this due diligence that we have by virtue of us sitting in one place for a long time. In terms of me, for example, I sit for long hours, so it's a blessing in disguise, as they say. So there's that. So it's employers' awareness and training, and as well as people with disabilities on the job training, and the peers in the workplace, how to deal with people with disabilities, how to understand where to draw the line, when you can help, when you cannot help, and to appreciate that sometimes it's not, you don't have to do things the conventional way. There are innovative ways of how you can deal with, you can do something or you can achieve something. And the only difference is perhaps we might just need a little bit of help, but we can do it.
Do you have any key messages or recommendations that you would like to relay to those working on the post-2015 development framework?
The first thing I think is going back to question 1 when you mentioned, or is it question 2, I believe, where you mentioned that the MDGs. The MDGs, yeah. Did they make any mention, or did they focus on disability in any sense? It is important that not to make the same mistake as last time, and to explicitly as well as implicitly include people with disabilities within the post-development agenda and the issues, so that perhaps disability can be included as a standalone segment as well as within other priority areas. And this is what we do here at HCD. We work initially and perhaps mainly in order to include and guarantee that issues with disabilities issues of disabilities are included within national policies and strategies. And so in terms of messaging, it's to include people with disabilities and their issues and their voices within that dialogue and that framework or that agenda, and then to reiterate the notion that development cannot be completely and comprehensively inclusive unless disability is accounted for, and then to work on the implementation of that agenda with a clear and focused mechanism that will ensure that our voice is available and heard and loud and clear in all phases of the process, in all steps of the strategy that we take to implement this agenda.
Do you have anything else to add before we conclude?
It's important to say that as a member of HCD and as person with multiple disabilities myself. I think what the UN is doing is fantastic, and I think those consultation sessions are really enlightening. I think we're learning and you're learning, and I think it is a good sign for all of us in the disability community to know and to appreciate that really the UN and the UN community is learning from its first mistake. So we're really looking forward to the outcomes of these consultations, and we're looking forward to the Jordanian report, and hopefully everything will go well. Best of luck.
Thank you. Alia, on behalf of the post-2015 team, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thank you.
Thank you.